Hello, welcome to the Chirp YouTube channel. My name is Christy. I'm glad you're here. I am your friendly online speech-language pathologist and specialist in children's communication development, which includes behavior, because behavior is one type of communication. Today, we are going to talk about the next thing that I would do if I were trying to put strategies into place that will help my child have better behavior overall. Behavior is not just behavior. Behavior typically communicates a lack of ability or a lack of support in some area, a lack of skills. If we look at any particular behavior from a child, we usually can filter down to the roots of this behavior, and there is some sort of lack of skills. It's very rare that a behavior is simply there because a child is being a butthead. That's not very typical. We can usually figure out some of the reasons behind the behaviors that we're seeing. We have a whole series right there that we have already started. If you would like to go back to the beginning and start at the very beginning, we have already discussed predictable schedules. And today we are going to discuss how to help children find and learn to use a way of communication. Not having a successful way to communicate is extremely frustrating. Not being able to interact with other human beings is extremely isolating and lonely and irritating, and not being able to get your wants and needs met is horrendous. It's very sad that anyone should have to live that way. And I think there are always things we can do to help people communicate better. This is my field. I am a speech-language pathologist, and my mission in my career is to help people communicate better, more efficiently, more effectively, more easily. I tend to focus on the pediatric population because I did some rotations and I did not enjoy working with grown-ups. One of the reasons for that is because most adults with communication deficits have them because of some sort of acquired difficulty, such as a stroke or a neurodegenerative disease. In these cases, definitely some augmentative communication strategies are helpful, but I could not change a person's life in the same way that I could by teaching a child how to ask for a drink of water or her favorite toy. That is truly life-changing. I know it's life-changing for an adult who has maybe lost speech due to an illness to be able to use some sort of device to ask for those things as well. But it didn't fill me with quite the same joy that I get from doing that with a child. First of all, I want to say that if at all possible, and in most cases I hope it is possible, most of my viewers are in the United States or other English-speaking countries, and most of you should have speech-language pathologists available to you. If your child is very young, please get a play-based speech-language pathologist, not someone who's going to work on articulation, which is how sounds are produced. We want someone who is interacting with the child in a way that is enjoyable, in a way that is age appropriate. Now that I have said that, please find a speech-language pathologist, also known as an SLP, because we are the ones who are trained to help kids learn to communicate more effectively. It's important to have one of us on your team, maybe more than one of us. Maybe you have a school-based SLP and an SLP who comes into your home. I have been both of those in my career. After you have someone who's on board with you, along with that person, you should be investigating ways to help your child communicate. If your child currently communicates by making a noise or pulling you towards something that she wants, these are methods of communication, but we can make them more effective by shaping them into things that a wider population would be able to understand. If your child stands in front of the fridge and goes, you might know that that means I need some water, but the world at large is not going to know that. So we can put other strategies into place. What are some of these strategies? Well, we can use gestures, we can use pictures. I've mentioned pictures a lot. We can use devices, we can use writing, we can use drawing. There are lots of different ways to communicate. In fact, if you think about it, you have probably used multiple communication modalities just today. I am talking right now. I could also write a note. I could also type something to someone on my phone. I could also telepathically send you a message. Okay, that one doesn't work so well, but all of the other ones are methods of communication that I have already used today. And communication also includes what we get from other people. So I have also listened and read and looked at pictures from other people. So there are lots of different ways that communication happens, even if we don't speak. And it's important to know that all of these methods will help your child communicate, even if your child is not yet verbal. Of course, we all want children to move towards being verbal simply because that's what's typical, that's what we're used to in our society. But if not, we want to make sure, or until we want to make sure that that child is able to get her wants and needs met, to communicate her thoughts, to comment on things, to join in the conversation and the social life that is happening all around her. We choose, now I'm going to probably leave most of this, of course, up to your SLP because she is going to be the specialist in your child in addition to you. But the way that we normally choose is based on what's available to us and what the child naturally gravitates to. If your child naturally gravitates towards picture cards such as this, then use these. These are my favorite way to communicate for kids or to teach kids to communicate originally, just because it's very low tech, it's very inexpensive, and it can expand to include all the things that the child might need. Also, these symbols are very common. They're used in lots of schools and in lots of therapy programs. So most people who are in the field of education are familiar with them. Of course, if you have government assistance or a larger budget, then I am going to suggest some sort of augmentative device. A lot of times this field is called AAC, Augmentative Alternative Communication. In some cases, the communication is augmentative. It is adding something to the conversation that the child or person couldn't communicate otherwise. In some cases, this device is alternative because the child is not communicating verbally at all, and this device is the communication. We use these a lot in classrooms. We use them where possible in families. They've never been my favorite, but I'm starting to come around simply because the science, the research is showing that they are more effective than I thought they were. I haven't had the best of luck using these with my clients, but they have become much more modern since they first came out, since they first arrived on the scene, when they were very clunky, they were easy to break, they were difficult to program, and the symbols were not well organized. Things have changed quite a bit, And now they are much easier to program. They are much easier to use. They're much more intuitive. And children are much more familiar with technology than they were 20 years ago because they are using tablets. They are using smartphones. And they know how menus stack. They know that when they click on play, there will be toys and games and outside play, and when they click on those, they will each have an individual menu inside them as well. This was not necessarily common knowledge when we started introducing these devices some time ago. It was my understanding for a long time that using a physical item that the child had to hand to you, such as in the picture exchange communication system, which I am still a big fan of because I've seen it work quite well with all children I've used it with. I was under the impression that because there was this physical and social interaction, the child has to hand you something and face her body toward you when doing that. This was going to create better social skills than simply pushing a button on a machine. However, new studies have indicated that that is not the case. The actual handing of the symbol or the sentence strip or the item to someone else does not necessarily mean that your social skills and your communication skills will progress faster or farther than using a device. The device didn't prove to be better either, but there are benefits to the device because it can expand much more, of course, because it's a device. It holds more than little pictures that we have to print out and laminate and put Velcro on. The device itself may be more expensive up front, but it's easy to change out. It's easy to add pictures of relatives we want to talk about. It's easy to use for multiple children. It's no harder than carrying a tablet around, and carrying one of these communication books can be a bit bulky sometimes, especially if it's full of things. Also, newer research is showing that introducing more symbols to a child at the same time is more effective than sort of dribbling them in. I always believed, as most in my field did, that teaching just a few at a time was probably a better way to start. And for some of our kids who have more cognitive delay, it is very important to start with fewer pictures because it's difficult for them to discern and actually understand what they're doing when they hand you a picture or when they push a button. We need to start slow for many kids. That's still the case. But on the whole, for most children, it's beneficial to have lots of options, kind of right up front. So, if your SLP working with you on finding a way for your child to communicate is aware of this research, then she will probably be teaching your child to use some kind of device or communication app. She will probably be doing things that are very, very fun for your child to make communicating and to make interacting with other people exciting and fun and motivating. We also want to not just work on one area of communication, like requesting snacks. We also want to work on commenting on things, describing things. Commenting is really one of the most important things because it comes from the inside. It's a personal thing. It's a social thing. Commenting is not required in communication. You and I could go along just fine walking down the street and just talking to each other when we need something. But it's very difficult to build a relationship if all we do is talk to each other when we need something. Could you hand me that coat? Instead, what really makes human interaction and personal is that we comment on things. Wow, look, a turtle. The blue sky is so beautiful today. Wow, that's awesome drawing. These are the things that really build relationships, and they're the things that help us express who we are. And therefore, it's very important that we also provide children an opportunity, many opportunities, to comment on things, and that we model that ourselves. Now, how do we use these communication tools once we have them? Let me first turn towards gestures for a moment, because I have spoken on this channel before how I do not recommend that sign language be the only form of communication that we try to teach children with communication disorders, especially children with autism spectrum disorders. The reason for this is that many children with autism also have motor difficulties. They have difficulty sequencing motor movements. This is also called apraxia. And it makes it very difficult for them sometimes to make an accurate enough motion that it is understandable as a gesture. For example, if I can't do this, I'm not going to be able to do the sign for water, and it might end up looking like something else. And we can adapt. We can take that. I understand that from Jack. That means he would like his water, please. But if we are working so hard to teach this symbol that is very hard for him, and it's not going to be recognized in the outside world, outside of this one particular classroom and his home, then wouldn't it be better to teach him to use a device where he could push the water, which is much easier motion than this, or to teach him how to use a picture symbol that he could hand to someone or point to someone if he needs water? Because these things he can take out into the world. He can ask the server for water in a way that is understandable to all English speakers. And in fact, he can easily, if it's a device, he can easily translate to other languages for it to output into other languages if he's in a different country. And of course, even if it's the picture symbols and it says water underneath instead of voda, then the picture still shows water, and that is recognizable to humans with eyes who can see. So, while I support gestures as a form of communication, and definitely gestures as a form of communication for people who have hearing impairment, and even though I think that they are a good supplement, especially when children are very young and nonverbal, it is a difficult thing for most children to make gestures that are sufficiently clear enough to be used for communication by themselves long term. However, we do have other options, as we've already discussed. How do we use these devices or picture books in general? I do have a series, it's a little bit on the old side, but about how to use communication books according to the PECS protocol, the Picture Exchange Communication System protocol. Now, I do not use their protocol exactly the way that they do. They do have trainings that you can take so that you can learn their specific protocol and the scientific reasons behind why they recommend what they do. But the way that I use it is that I print out pictures of commenting words, and I like it, I don't like it, cool, some emotion words, I need help, and then of course things that the child might want or request or might not want. And we use these as much as possible throughout our session together, or throughout the day at school or church or wherever I am hanging out with this child. So when the child experiences something that he doesn't like and makes a face, I point to, I don't like it. I don't like it. And I model for the child. Sometimes I will ask, I like it, I don't like it. And I will ask the child to point to one or the other. I like it or I don't like it. We do a lot of activities where the children would come up with comments like this. I like it, I don't like it. I also do games where we bring in things, fruits and vegetables usually, that have a very specific taste to them, such as a lemon, or what's something that's very sweet? A strawberry, a really ripe one, or watermelon. And we allow the kids to taste, but then we have a communication board that has a lot of different taste words on it, such as sweet, sour, salty, chewy, bitter, lots of different taste words, and we can all comment on how things taste. Of course, this is exactly the same procedure if you're using a device instead of a book, because a device is going to have these words built in depending on the overlays. That's not what it's called, the pages that you choose. And I'm not sure how it works where you live, but usually the school district or the speech-language pathologist who comes into your home is going to be the one who programmed the device for you. If you have an app on your tablet, then you can program the pictures in the way that you want them. And I also should point out some additional research that says that you should not move the pictures around a lot. With the picture exchange communication system, we do move the pictures around because we want to make sure that the children know that there's a difference between this and this, that it's not a banana because it's on the left-hand side of the page. It's the banana because it looks like a banana. We're trying to help them to differentiate one line drawing from another line drawing. However, with a device, it doesn't matter as much if they can differentiate the pictures. What matters is they're pushing the right button. And in that case, we want the buttons to remain in the same spot at all times. So we don't really want to make the device specific for only this one child. It would be like making a keyboard on your computer that's just for you, where the letters that you use the most are in the right spots. This might be helpful for you when you're at home, but if you try to use anyone else's computer, you will be incapable. And this is how it is for your child as well. Yes, you want her to be able to find the pictures that she uses the most, but you also want her to be able to use other devices of the same type successfully and be able to find the things that she needs there as well. And a lot of times a teacher in a class will have all the same kind of device in that classroom, and they can kind of be used interchangeably because the things will be in the same place and the kids will know where to find them. Of course, the most important thing is to make use of this device or this communication book part of your daily routine. It's part of every activity you do. We want to generalize use of communication in everything that we do. If your child is nonverbal, we need to find a way that your child can indeed communicate until the verbal language develops. And many families are nervous that if we provide augmentative support for communication, their children will not learn to communicate verbally. But this is untrue. All of these sorts of communication supports actually help children learn communication. They help children become more verbal. I've seen it lots of times in my career. My favorite thing to do is start working with kids before they're verbal, because the kind of communication that comes just blossoms, and it's thrilling to see that happening. So do not be afraid that by using augmentative or alternative communication strategies, your child will never learn to talk. That is not necessarily the case. And in fact, most children do learn to communicate verbally. Most children with autism do learn to communicate verbally. And the more we do communication intervention, the more we interact with the child, the more we use these communication strategies and supports, the more likely it is that our children will learn to communicate in functional and enjoyable and social ways that help them in the world, that are practical, that are easy for them to use and fun for them to use, and that really help them build relationships in the real world. That is what we truly want. I have put lots of resources in the box below this video. If you go kind of under the video and then click on more, a whole box will open up and you will be able to see many, many helpful resources that will give you more details about this. I do not want you to feel as if all of this is on your shoulders, because you most likely are not a professional in the field of speech-language pathology. We have a lot of training, not only a master's degree and pre-master's classes as well, but we have to pass a particular test. We have to get constant continuing education credits in order to maintain our certificate and our state license. There's a lot that goes into what we do that you need that on your side to help your child communicate most effectively. So please get someone involved with you, with your family, and ask questions. If your speech pathologist is not working on communication using some sort of visual system for communicating, some sort of device or book that has visuals in it that your child can hand or push buttons, then that needs to be happening. Your child needs to have a successful communication strategy and method. If you need to work on this yourself because you're not in a place where you can find an SLP who can work with you, then go to the resources below and I will put the best ones I can find that will hopefully help you. And as a very last thing, if you would like to consult with me, your friendly online speech-language pathologist, about this topic or about any other topic related to child development, including behavior, including all of those things, please email me. I would be willing to set up an appointment with you to chat on the phone or to do a video chat so that I can give you some tips. We can work together just one time. We can work together weekly or monthly or on an as-needed basis. I can be your coach so that you can provide the communication supports your child needs, even if you don't have an SLP in your area, although hopefully you do. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.